Hey, I'm Sam, and it's early in the morning here in Highlands. I say that in every video. I was thinking about that as I was walking through the forest to get here. I always make these videos first thing in the morning, because the longer I have time to think about it, the more kind of analytical storytelling mind takes over, and before you know it, you've lost the essence of what it is you want to communicate. So I try and make these videos before I've even really woken up, before I have time to think too much, because they're always clear. As soon as I wake up in the morning, I know exactly what I want to say, and exactly what I need to say, and the longer I leave it, the further away it goes. And so I think it's just after 7 o'clock in the morning. It's going to be a roasting hot day, but it's cold now. As the sun comes up, it creates, I don't know, the air starts to move around a little bit more. So there's a little bit of a breeze. The best time to go swimming is first thing in the morning, where it's like a mirror, and as the sun comes up, you get more and more waves. And I will be swimming later. Okay, so it's been nearly 3 weeks since I made a video, and I've been grieving, and I'm going to talk about grief in this video. But before I do, I want to say thank you so much to everybody that donated and donates regularly. You make these videos possible because I can give my attention to this channel. I can give my attention to answering all the emails I get and the comments, and talking to people who reach out. And I couldn't do that if I worked full time. So the money I make from looking after the wonderful dogs that are in my life, and the houses of people that, the households that those dogs belong to, that money combined with the donations make ends meet, and it means I can give my attention to the things that have nourished me and brought me back from the edge, which is relationships with you guys that reach out, relationships with the dogs that I love so dearly and love me, and the households that value and trust me, and that helped me learn to value and trust myself. So thank you to everybody that donates, because you make this possible. And if you do need to get in touch, there's a link below this video, and if you want to donate and support what I do on this channel, there's also a link below to a PayPal donate. Thank you again to everybody that provided questions under the last video, because I said if anyone has any questions, just write them below, and if I have a dry spell and I have nothing to say, I can use those questions to sort of inspire a video. So yeah, I had lots of questions, for various things, related to processing shame, loving your abuser, if it's a family member, it's so confusing, detransition, transition, things like that. So I will get to them over the future videos, so thank you. But in this video I wanted to talk about grief, because I have been grieving the most intense grief I've felt for years. So the day after I published the last video, 3 weeks ago tomorrow, I had a message from a friend, and one of my oldest friends, where he was only 3 years older than me, died, and I couldn't feel it for quite a few days, and then I felt it, and it erupted. The grief erupted in waves of intense sorrow, and so I've gone through pretty intense time over the last 3 weeks, and at the same time as I was grieving the loss of my friend, a book arrived, and it was recommended a while ago, but it took months to arrive, and that book was The Wounded Heart by Dr. Dan Allender, and it's it's a book I recommend highly. I don't really read books on trauma and healing and stuff like that. I just, if I read any books on that have helped me, they're books on spirituality, the Christian mystics, Zen. Both of those have helped me immensely. Thomas Merton, James Finley, Reb Anderson for Zen is good. Books like the Tao Te Ching, Zhuangzi, those have all really helped me. And so I kind of don't really read books on healing modalities and stuff like that. I'd rather read about what is this place? How do we fit in? What does it mean to be a human? There are definite ways of being that invite harmony and relationship. And those ways are old, eternal wisdom, truth. And so those kind of books have helped me immensely. But this book arrived, The Wounded Heart. Specifically, it's about the consequences of sexual abuse in childhood and what that does to us, what we live with. And but if you've experienced any kind of trauma in childhood, any kind of abuse and neglect as well, this book will help you. And I'll link it below as well. This book will help you. And so every day, I read that book in a week, and I read for about an hour or two every morning. And I grieved every single day. I've grieved for what I went through. I grieved for what I lived with for my entire life. I felt hatred, I felt anger, I felt loss. I felt the loss of my friend. I felt the loss of my boyhood, the loss of my life to drugs and alcohol, self-harm, desperation and crisis over and over again. And it was my friend that reached out to me I think it was about 4 years ago, when I was in the midst of a breakdown. It was just really beginning to destroy the idea of who I thought I was. And he reached out and he told me, you've got complex PTSD. And he suffered. He had, I'm not going to say too much about this because it wouldn't be right, but he suffered. And he suffered all his life with the consequences of what he experienced. But he couldn't get past the rage. He couldn't get past the anger. But he reached out to me about 4 years ago and said, you've got complex PTSD and you need to get help. And I'd never even heard of it before, but I began to look into it and I just thought, shit, oh my God, this makes sense out of my entire life. My entire life now makes sense. And so he was the inspiration for me, just, trying to reach out and get some help and understanding. And we told each other we loved each other. And we bonded in a whole new way in those years. But there were times when he was so full of rage and anger, I just couldn't talk to him. And I was going through my own process and I just couldn't, I talked to him, but I just couldn't talk to him for long because it was so intense and overwhelming. And I just wish I had the capacity to be there for him more. But I know I'll see him again. And I know that he's at peace now, and I don't know how he would have ever found closure and peace in this life, because he was just carrying so much. We have to grieve. We become the container for it all. As children, we become the container for it all, because there is no safe place. There is no container in relationship where we can feel vulnerable and in relationship, in intimate understanding and nurturing love, we can process whatever difficulties come up as children. We can learn to be a person in relationship. We become the container. We become the container for everything. Pain, anxiety, fear, grief, loss, sorrow. And we hold it all inside. We hold it inside. We store it in our bodies. And then we live in our mind, because mind is a refuge. Mind is a coping mechanism. Talking, describing, explaining, thinking, trying to fix yourself. Trying to plan, living in hope, living in plans. Incessantly talking to yourself all the time. I'm going to do this. Why didn't I do that? I feel contempt. I long. And longing is torture. Hope is torture. So we isolate. And we make a container outside ourselves, a container of isolation, the rules and boundaries of the life where we feel safe. And it's a fucking prison. It's a fucking prison. The body can't contain it all. Your mind can't be an endless refuge. You have to let it out. You have to grieve. You have to grieve. And I think my friend just couldn't allow himself to feel how heartbroken he was. How heartbroken he was at the treatment that he experienced. Because underneath the rage and anger is heartbreak, is sorrow, is loss. It's a quite naturally arising imperative to love and bond. And when the person that you are driven to love and bond with hates you, abuses you, hurts you, rejects you, that is agonizingly heartbreaking. And we don't want to acknowledge that because we want to hate. We want to hold on to anger and injustice. So acknowledging the heartbreak and love that you wanted to give, and maybe you still do. The dissonance that creates inside you, the contempt you feel for yourself, for that thing that you feel so weak for, the need to love. You hate yourself for it. You feel contempt. So feeling that heartbreak, feeling the sorrow and loss, and the grief. You know, it's been years for me. It's been years. As I keep saying in my videos, there is an essential quality to the human experience, and that is loss. We hold so tightly when we feel solace and soothing connection. We hold so tightly. But you must hold lightly, because everything will slip away in the end. You will lose everything. And the sooner you learn to just be with it all, to be with that essential loss, to be with your sorrow, to be with your suffering, you can feel what's underneath it all. What's underneath it all is this mysterious, endless, eternal sense of being. And to be with the suffering is to also understand that there is a maturity underneath it all, within which your humanity and your brokenness is contained. And that maturity is forgiving. It's forgiving of your flawed and frail humanity. It's loving, endlessly loving. Love is the essence of that maturity. And that is you. That is me. So don't fear your own heartbreak. Don't deny your longing to love and be loved, maybe even by the person that abused you. Don't feel contempt for yourself. You know, there was a comment under one of my older videos that's had loads of views over the last week, about 40,000 views. And somebody underneath it said, a young man, he said, "You are weak. You are weak. I was abused and I met it head on because I am strong. You gave in and you are weak." And underneath that comment I said, "You have a lot to learn, and those lessons are going to be very painful, but I wish you well." And he said, "You didn't learn because you are weak. I am strong." And I said underneath, "You still didn't ask." Oh no, what did I say? I said, "Tell me, what is it you wanted me to feel and wanted you to feel when you wrote this comment?" And he said, "You don't deserve an answer because you are weak." At which point I gave up. That's contempt. That's contempt, not for me, but for the vulnerability I embody, and his contempt for his own vulnerability, which he perceives as weakness. Vulnerability is an unavoidable element of actually showing up, being present, being present. It's not weakness. I don't even think it's strength. It just is. It's part of the human experience. It's how we allow the world to find us, how we allow ourselves to be found and met by others. It is stable. I'm not sure strong is a word I'd use to describe it. It's just stable. And as we open to our own vulnerability, the bandwidth of our presence expands and becomes more and more and more stable. And you cease to be the container for everything. And this is where you are. The world is the container for your being for now. So don't fear the grief. Don't hate yourself. I've had people tell me they hate me when they watch my videos. Very honest of them to admit that. But like I say, that hatred isn't for me. It's for what they perceive as weakness in themselves, their own vulnerability. You know, I realised something yesterday. You know, it's been a really intense 3 weeks, and I realised something. So often over the last 3 weeks, I had the longing to slip back into coping mechanisms and stories and hope. Nothing really matters anymore, really, other than presence and relationship and truth. No hopes, no plans, nothing. Just being here. Relationship. Being here for each other. I'm going to end on this. A lovely lady who watched some of my videos a few months ago reached out. She lives in Scotland, and she's had a career of working with abused children, and she wanted to meet, and we talked on Zoom first, and I met her this week, and we had a lovely lunch together, and we talked for about 4 hours, her and another very wise old lady, and it was quite strange. I felt like I'd been headhunted by Miss Marple, a mystical Miss Marple. But it was a lovely time, and we talked about what it means to be human, what our lives are for, what matters. And the older lady said to me, "Who do you love? Who do you love? That's what's important. Who do you love?" You know, and I just said to her, I think I love everybody, actually. I love everybody, I think. You know, we're all so fucking broken and flawed. And so many of us don't even love ourselves. Whatever that means. You know, esteem yourself, respect yourself, value yourself. I think love comes from the love we feel for each other. It's something shared. It's not something you can solely feel for yourself. You love. You are a being that loves. And I don't think I was ever capable of that before. Not really. Because I didn't value my own existence. There was no tenderness in my life, no gentleness. I was punishing myself for what I experienced as a kid. My whole life I punished myself. So think about this. How do you punish yourself? In the smallest of ways. In the way you resist your own freedom. You resist your own heartbreak and sorrow. How do you punish yourself? I will link that, the lady that reached out, I'll link her website, her channel below as well. She's got an amazing channel, and she works with the human voice in songs of grief and mourning. And watch some of her videos, and it will just open something up inside you, and maybe you will begin to grieve. So I'll link that below. She and I will probably be working together in some form in the future as well. So let's give you another taste of the view before I say goodbye. Beautiful Scotland. I think that's it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your lovely support, your kind attention. I'm trying to offer something meaningful and helpful, and I promise I'm trying to make more videos. I just, you know, life happens, and I'm in the midst of my own process as well. So I do these videos as often as possible. If you need to get in touch, there's a link below. And if you want to support me and help me keep making these videos, then donations are very welcome, and they make a huge difference. So thank you so much, and I'll see you soon. Bye.